Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're on the other side of the planet. Welcome to the Thrive Innovation Series here in Silicon Valley. I'm John Hartnett, CEO and founder of SVG Ventures and Thrive. We're an innovation and investment platform that's advancing the future of food and agriculture through innovation. And I'm delighted to be joined here today by Scott Komar, Senior Vice President of Global R&D at Driscoll's, and Nate Storey, co-founder and chief science officer at Plenty, to chat about flavor innovation and inside Driscoll's and Plenty. So welcome, guys. Great to have you here today.
Thanks for having us, John.
Great to be here.
Next slide, Jess. If you want to join in the conversation, if you want to share any information regarding our conversation and some of the discussion points, please join in. Join us on Twitter, our LinkedIn. Love to hear your voice, love to hear your messages, and looking forward to that. Next slide, Jess. Our Thrive Innovation Series, we've focused our webinar series on the future of food supply chain from field to fork, as well as addressing some of the challenges of feeding a growing population in a sustainable way while dealing with climate change and the impact of this global pandemic that we're all dealing with. We've been discussing key trends, technologies, and solutions across the agri-food industry with top CEOs, innovators, entrepreneurs, and investors. So we've had a great number of months meeting with many key leaders, and today will be no exception. Next month in December and also January, February, we will be doing our Thrive Challenges. These are the pitch events for Australia, Canada, and Australia. And then in February, I'm delighted to be joined by Frank Yiannis, who is the FDA Deputy Commissioner. So I think they're pretty busy over in the FDA at the moment. So looking forward to chatting with him in February. Next slide, Jess. The Thrive Accelerator was voted #1 agri-food accelerator in the world last year by the World Agri-Food Summit and by AgFunder. We have had some incredible success stories from the past 6 years, and these companies have created almost $1 billion in value. Next slide. Delighted to recognize one of our alumni from 2017. This is FarmWise. Sebastian and the team were just recognized by Time Magazine as the best inventions for 2020. So congratulations to the team. They're definitely demonstrating what it takes to advance the future of food and agriculture through innovation. Next slide, Jess. So our deadline for our Thrive 7 applications closes tomorrow. So entrepreneurs, you need to put your applications in. I know from checking what we've seen, we've applications from over 70 countries already, and this will be a record year in terms of the number of companies that are applying and participating. Next slide, Jess. We also launched our Thrive Global Challenges for both scale-up companies and also for startups, supporting the USDA goals in terms of producing more with less and driving sustainability, and also the SDG goals. And we've launched this in various different countries across the world, and we're putting particular focus around Africa, Australia, and Canada. And maybe next slide, Jess. If you want to play the video there and give you a bit of a taste. Thanks, Jess. And if we just go to the next slide, we've got a great selection of judges for Australia, key leaders across the industry, companies like Costa, Grain Corp, MLA, LIC, our partners Cyro, So delighted to have a great lineup for Australia, and we will run that pitch event next month. So make sure you join us and see the best of Australia. Next slide, Jess. Likewise with Canada, we're delighted to have some of the top leading companies in Canada, including Nutrien, FCC, and also delighted to be joined by Corteva, Trimble, to help us select the best companies from Canada, and we will run that challenge in January. And next slide, delighted that we have the Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food for Canada to join us for the Canadian launch. So delighted to have Minister Bibeau join us. So great honor to have her participate. Next slide, Jess. If you're interested in any of our programs, if you're interested in partnering with us with our open innovation activities or getting involved in our Thrive Accelerator, please contact us on our website. I'd be delighted to hear from you and love to see you engage. Next slide. And today we've got an exciting discussion. I think we're changing the game in terms of going from field to fork. It's going to be somewhere in the supply chain, closer to the consumer. And that's why there's so many people around the world joining us today. I think we've got people from over 30 countries and from 36 states, across the US, and see quite a number of farmers and growers. I think that's a record for us in terms of just seeing the numbers of growers that are interested in this. So people are paying attention here in the world of agriculture. Next slide. We're launching a live poll as we do each month, and you should see this pop up on your screen. And if you scroll up, you'll see the second question. So please, please fill this out now. We'd love to we will come back to that and obviously kind of discuss your votes and suggestions here. Next slide. We'll also do a Q&A with Nate and Scott later on. So please submit your questions now. If you like somebody else's question, you should upvote them so that we can address the best questions for everybody. And looking forward to doing that, shortly. Next slide, Jess. So again, really delighted to be here with the leaders of Driscoll's and Plenty, and what they're doing for this industry is pretty amazing. And this partnership is a key inflection point for the agriculture world and consumers around the world as well. Let me first introduce Scott. Scott, as I'd mentioned, is Senior Vice President of Global R&D. Scott leads the global R&D group for the world's leading fresh berry company, which includes agronomists, breeders, and plant scientists who are using natural breeding techniques to develop proprietary berry varieties that are then grown on independent family farms. Prior to Driscoll's, Scott has spanned 15 years in packaged salad industry as Senior Vice President of Operations and Strategic Planning at Fresh Express. He's also a graduate from UCLA, Bachelor of Science in Stanford University with a Master's of Science, and lives in Carmel with his wife, Chris. So he's a busy man. And I know he's in Texas today. So thanks for going out of your way to join us. And let me just introduce Nate as well before I hand it over for some of the introductions. Nate, as you know, you've heard from Nate earlier in the summer. Nate is co-founder and chief science officer at Plenty. Nate received his PhD in agronomy from the University of Wyoming with an emphasis on vertical plane hydroponic production. He has extensive experience in plant production and equipment design. And Nate also founded and was CEO of Bright Agrotech, a leader in vertical plane production technology for indoor and greenhouse growers. Two busy people here. So maybe if I we could kick it off here, and I'll hand it over to Scott to maybe give you a little bit of an insight in terms of what's going on at Driscoll's, and we can get into the conversation afterwards, after Nate's discussion as well. So Scott. Okay,
thank you, John. Always enjoy the Thrive webinars, and it's a pleasure to be here today. For our audience today, just a few slides. We'll take an inside look at Driscoll's, may prompt some questions later on, but I wanted to lay out a little bit of a path to why we're so excited to partner with Plenty. What you can see on the page here are the 4 berries that Driscoll's delivers: strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, and blackberries. So, and you'll see yellow label, conventional, green, organic, and we do everything in mind around our mission. And simply stated, you can see it here: to continually delight our berry consumers through alignment with our customers and our growers. So we use the word consumer as those that are purchasing our product. And I hope today we have many attending that are consumers of Driscoll's. Our customers are typically retailers, wholesalers, food service, and so forth. And our berry growers, I should mention, are independent. These are independent, often typically family-run businesses that partner with us to bring these products to the market. Next slide. And Driscoll's has a heritage that goes back over 100 years. And so as everybody's kind of looking at the timeline here, I'll just make note that, literally where we are headquartered in Watsonville, California, a couple hours south of San Francisco, is where strawberries got started in that region. And that was back at the turn of the century, there, 1900. And over that time, different families came together, and you'll see that in the middle, around the 1940s or so. And at the time, everything was done under a banner, and that's how things got to market in these wood crates. Now, that was innovation back then, John. We brought together the Driscoll Strawberry Associates. And in the 50s, our first proprietary variety was developed in strawberries. And that's something I'll talk about more as we go through here today. Then over time, as we went ahead future decades, we consolidated around the family name Driscoll's. And of course, that's our brand today. And then we got later on into around the 2000s and so forth, we were expanding across different continents. And I'll show a picture of that here in a second. But certainly innovation has been a hallmark for Driscoll's all throughout its history. And that's inspired by everyone at Driscoll's, all of our associates, and certainly we take great inspiration from our family ownership. We're privately held. You can see in the lower right-hand corner our CEO, Miles Ryder, and they're a great inspiration and steward of this business over all these years. On the next slide, we'll see our reach today. And this, I don't know if this surprises some folks, but the company has grown, again, these 4 berries, what we call the berry patch, over the years. And today our reach is on multiple continents. And that's really how we've organized our business. The group that I lead, Global R&D, has this global reach to serve the needs of our business units in North and South America. We call that Driscoll's of the Americas. There's Driscoll's of EMEA, Driscoll's of China, you'll see, and then Driscoll's of Australia and New Zealand. Combined, it's $4 billion in sales that we exceeded this year across 22 countries, 6 continents, and so forth. We think there's around 350 million consumers of our products. And something we're very proud of as well, almost 900 independent growers, these family-run businesses, that through the extension of their workforce, this combined workforce we see is now right around 115,000 people employed in the Driscoll's reach globally. So we're very happy to have this big family that brings these products to the market every day. Next slide. So we'll get into this, I imagine, with some of the Q&A, but how do we deliver these these products to the consumer? Well, it really starts with our R&D group. It's a fantastic group of very passionate scientists. You see a couple of them here. These are breeders, agronomists, physiologists. It brings the whole group together along these natural breeding techniques that, and it takes time, it takes many years to bring a new product to the market, but ultimately those become a proprietary variety. Those varieties are grown by our independent growers. And then we bring that to market through our customers, our retailers. And so a lot of science actually goes into developing these products. And on the next slide, this is my favorite slide. I'll finish here. But you know, ultimately it's what gets us excited is when we see enjoyment with all this work that comes together. And I love this slide because I love seeing kids. They you know, even putting the raspberries on the fingers or whatever. But this is what we're passionate about, and to us the finish line is to seeing the families that can enjoy these products and take them home, and especially their kids. Next slide, I think is the last one. Yep. So I'll say thank you, and I'll turn it over to Nate.
Thanks. Thanks, Scott. And maybe before I hand it to Nate, I think that berries delight everybody around the world. I think it puts a smile on everybody's face. As you mentioned, the raspberries there, I remember my daughter, who's not going to like to hear this now, because she's 17, but she had her 5 raspberries on her fingers.
Yeah. Okay.
And, but it's such a rich history going back, you know, over a century, and it's incredible to see the progress and how you're delighting customers. And I'm really getting excited to see how you're going to even top what you're doing today with Plenty. So, Nate, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. Great, so I'm Nate Storey. I'm the Chief Science Officer and co-founder here at Plenty. And Plenty, next slide. Plenty is an indoor farming company, so we grow things indoors, and our mission is to improve the lives of people, plants, and planet. So we're growing new plants, amazing plants, trying to deliver new flavors to people. We grow close to our consumers, and overall we are focused on growing the size of the planet, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We've spent the last 10,000 years in agriculture trying to control nature, and we've done an incredibly good job for what we have. So tractors in irrigation, genetic modification, large fields, pesticides, inputs, have really allowed us to control nature to a degree that is unprecedented. And this has allowed us to expand ag all over the world, and yet we still don't have enough agriculture. So that is why Plenty is here. So Plenty exists, next slide, to build on top of the field. So globally, people want 2 to 3 times as many fresh fruits and vegetables as they have available to them today. The problem is getting them to people. The problem is expanding the size of a finite world where there's only so much land, there's only so much water, there are only so many resources. And that land, those resources, that water is not distributed evenly over the planet. So at Plenty, we're using indoor technology to create more land. We're basically using these super dense production systems to grow food closer and closer to the consumer. And we believe that this is basically the beginning of the next revolution in agriculture. The first gave us calories, and the second one, I would say, will give us nutrition, but more importantly, will give us joy. And so, we're really excited about that. And I think we're really well aligned with Driscoll's and their focus on delight. That's very exciting to us. Next slide. So we use these farms. These are massive farms that leverage kind of these vertical planes to grow a lot of plants in a very small amount of space. And we use them to produce massive amounts of produce, oftentimes in the cities that we serve. And we focus very much on quality. We focus very much on flavor. We focus on giving people the things that just don't stand up in really long supply chains. Next slide. We think about this as creating new farmland. So if you think about, the places where it's economical to grow these things, there aren't very many of those places in the world. So when it comes to strawberries, there's only so many places you can grow really great strawberries. You can't grow really great strawberries in Siberia. You can't grow really great strawberries in many parts of, say, Africa or the Middle East. And so when we think about, what indoor farming can do, it creates perfect farmland almost anywhere in the world. So think of it as expanding the size of the world from an agricultural standpoint. So we use much less land, much less water, up to 350 times as much production per square foot as say the field, which allows us to concentrate a lot of productivity in population centers. We're insulated from extreme weather, so we're pretty much weather or location agnostic. As long as there's power and water and people, we can grow there, and we can grow very well there. And then the produce, because it's grown inside, is fresh, it's clean, it is ready to eat. And so, by and large, that does several things for us. Next slide. It drives a lot of, interesting consumption patterns. So we believe that the world needs a lot more fresh fruits and vegetables. So, most people globally are consuming only around 30% of the fresh fruits and vegetables that they should be. In the US, we're a little bit better. We're between 50 and 60% of the fresh fruits and vegetables that we should be consuming. And that basically means that the global fresh fruit and vegetable industry has to double to triple in order to meet all of that latent demand. So the idea is people want to eat more of this kind of food. They just don't have the access, or it's not consistent. And so, by building these farms, we're able to build these locally. So these are very close to the people that consume. It's accessible, flavorful, nutrient dense, it's sustainable, and there's no need to wash this stuff because it is barely touched by human hands, if at all. Has much longer shelf life, and it's always in season, which I think are really exciting when it comes to building great consumer loyalty and brand. And the thing that I will say here too, because oftentimes this gets turned into an indoor versus the field debate, and nothing could be further from the truth. The field must produce. It's essential to the survival of our species. It must keep producing. As long as humanity's around, the field must produce, and it must produce more. But what we also know to be true is that if we're talking about doubling to tripling the size of the entire global industry in fresh fruits and vegetables, we can't do that with the amount of land that we have today. So basically, there is a massive shortfall in supply in comparison to all of the latent demand of the world. So it's our job to come in and build that land to access that demand. Next slide. So, we've gotten off to a great start, and we've got a couple of great partnerships right now with Albertsons and with Driscoll's. We're going to be talking about Driscoll's a bit today, but we're excited that we have folks that are visionary, that believe many of the same things that we do about the world and about what people want and what people need. And we're really excited to engage with Driscoll's and with Albertsons in the next couple of years. Next slide. So we have two farms right now. We've got a farm in South San Francisco. This is kind of a farm that is serving a number of local stores, but it's also a bit of a research farm. So we're testing new systems in there and making sure that we've got mature tech. We've taken our time to make sure that the farms make economic sense before we deploy them. We don't want to deploy something that loses us money. We want to deploy something that demonstrates the economics that we are driving towards and the inevitability of an economical, massive indoor ag industry. Farm 2 is being built in Compton, and this is a massive farm. This is going to be by far the largest farm in the world in terms of output, and that will be launching next year. So if you live in LA or the LA area, you can look forward to starting to see our products on the shelves, greens over the next year. So that's exciting for all of us. Next slide. And then just speaking to our focus on quality, again, most people don't think about kale as being something that is delightful. Most people think about kale as a duty. to your body, right? To your health, to your family. And really, you know, I think what we're trying to do here is change the story about eating healthy, right? Change the experience in a way where something like kale can actually be delicious, delightful, something your children want to eat. And I think, you know, living in a world where people want to eat fresh fruits and vegetables because they are available, they're affordable, and they're delicious, you know, that is a world where people live longer, they live happier lives, and they can get really excited about going to the grocery store and buying a salad. So that's the world that we want to live in. Next slide. And that pretty much wraps it up. And I think, John, I'll hand it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Nate. I mean, it's really exciting times for Plenty and obviously for the industry, you know, like what you're doing in Compton and how you're scaling. And, you know, I think the common denominator of your two companies is around delighting customers or consumers and focusing on flavor, which is where it all kind of starts. Scott, I mean, talking about where it all starts, you know, tell us a little bit. Everybody's curious about, you know, why did Driscoll's partner with Plenty, and how is this fitting into the Driscoll's overall strategy?
Sure. Well, I'd like to actually go back to our mission and start there. So continuously delighting our berry consumers. That's our, you know, that's our pervasive mindset every day when we get up. And so to deliver on that, it actually starts with our global R&D group, really talented scientists that are working on these new varieties to bring to the consumers. So we're using these natural breeding methods, target optimal environments to grow our berries. And then we actually have specialists that come in that help us with the right kinds of plant management practices that get the full expression of these plants. And for those that are in this space, it's the, you know, the acronym or the equation, if you will, we call it G by E by M. So the genetics of these plants, by the environment, by the M is plant management. And when you do those three together, you get the full expression. Well, strawberries, it turns out, is a really complex genome. And of the 4 berries that we do, it is the most sensitive to the environment. For those that have been to the Watsonville area, you can imagine with the coastal influence, it's kind of a perfect climate to grow strawberries. And we have found other perfect climates around the world. But each case, we have to basically set up a breeding program. And so, for example, California, we have 3 distinct breeding programs for strawberry. And these often line up with the latitudes in the globe. There's a program in a much higher latitude up in the UK. There's a program I was just at last week in Mexico. It's a lower latitude program. And so we breed specifically for these latitudes, and then these genetics can get extended around the world. Also of note is that over time, and Nate had a slide that was showing, you know, kind of the history of farming. You know, today there's many growing systems that are in place. We grow open air and soil. We hoop and cover. We do tabletops where we get the strawberries off the ground. We do greenhouses. So all these systems are in place, and they'll continue to be in place in the years ahead. But we're very intrigued by Plenty because they bring a whole new growing system where the weather and the climate is perfectly controlled. And that's a bit of a Shangri-La environment for us after we've, you know, spent so many years basically adapting to the environment and so forth. In addition to that, we see other possibilities where when you're in the heart of a major city, and so I can tell you firsthand, when you're in the heart of Shanghai, it is a difficult city to distribute really any kind of produce to, but certainly things that are very perishable like berries. Dubai is another example. It's just not a, you know, certainly not in a climate that is conducive to this. And so as we were looking at, how could we further extend our reach globally and fill in, as we got to know Plenty, we saw that, wow, perfectly controlled climate and a super short supply chain to be very interesting for our customers, and almost like a direct store delivery model. And so we figured, well, if Frito-Lay can do this with potato chips, then why not Driscoll's with berries? And that's really where we got to this partnership with Plenty. We want to explore, how can we unlock our genetics, our breeding in the Plenty environment, this great technology that they have, and let's see what happens. But our hope is that we can figure this out and eventually take this to major cities around the world and extend our global reach.
It's awesome, Scott. Thank you. And Nate, obviously, I know we chatted back in July with yourself and Matt, and you did some consumer research and obviously showed that flavor was one of the key drivers for consumer demand. And I think from Driscoll's, they see that, they've done that research, see the same thing in terms of flavor. In terms of flavor, what does Plenty's indoor farm, how is that going to enhance and translate into berries?
Yeah. So, there are a lot of crops that are incredibly sensitive to their environmental conditions. And even if it doesn't always show up in yield, oftentimes, highly variable environments can show up in terms of flavor. Now, sometimes we want an environment that stresses the plant. Sometimes that gives us the right flavors. Sometimes we don't. And, it really kind of depends on the product that we're trying to create. So when it comes to things like strawberries, strawberries, as Scott noted, they're a really complicated plant. Of all the plants you could pick to mess with, strawberries are probably one of the toughest. And, the amazing thing is, Driscoll's has this long history of dealing with this super complex plant with these super complicated genetics and trying to wrangle this wild beast this genetically to perform in the field, right, in this variable environment. And so, when we think about bringing these plants inside that have all of these responses, lots of exceptions and not as many rules indoors, what we can do is we can bring it into an environment where there are no stresses. We can bring it into an environment that has a consistent nighttime temperature every single night. We can bring it into an environment where the nutritional demands of the plants are met perfectly every single day. And I think being able to eliminate plant stress in that way is both a boon for yield and for quality. And what it allows us to do is become basically designers of flavor. And we're seeing that with our greens, right? We can implement the types of environments that allow us to design flavors. You don't just get what you get. You are able to actually look forward and say, hey, we want this amount of sugar. We want these volatiles. We want this texture. We want, for our greens, this type of loft when we combine all of these things in a clamshell, and we can grow the plant to be that. So I think that's the most exciting thing. It turns farmers into designers.
Yeah, incredible. It's incredible. I got a text from somebody on the East Coast saying they're watching this now and eating strawberries and having ice cream or cream there. I don't think they understand the full complexities with all of this. But maybe a question for both of you, in terms of what does the Plenty Driscoll's berry look like, taste like, and maybe a question around, how is it going to impact the existing supply chain? And I'm going to ask this and I'll see how you answer it, or maybe you won't, but when can we taste that berry?
Okay. All right. Well, first thing I want to mention, when we were with Nate and his team a few weeks ago, we were enjoying their salads and no salad dressing. Okay. So for everybody here, imagine the last time you had a salad without, washing it down with salad dressing. It's a great testament to their system, but also that these greens can taste great just as they are. And that's our carryover certainly on strawberries. So I'll share a little bit into our world in these complex genetics that Nate mentioned. The breeding program, and it's really amazing if anybody's had a chance to spend time with breeding programs, they go after many different traits, flavor, yield, texture, color, how easy is the plant to pick the fruit, all these things, and in that process, I can tell you, it's kind of heartbreaking because every year we discard from the program something that looks really amazing, let's say from a flavor standpoint or a size of the berry or something like that. But we discard it because it's not likely that it's going to travel the normal supply chain. Okay, so that's okay. We keep going, and we always find over time something in there that's really exciting and new for the consumer. Our belief, and this is our premise, John, is that we think that the Plenty growing system is going to allow us to bring to market some of these varieties that really, it turns out, they're really optimal for an indoor environment. Okay. So that's where we're starting. We have 10 varieties that we've sifted through. We're excited about these, and so we're gonna test those, and that's our first phase right now. Down the road, and this is, I think, a part of the reason why Driscoll's has this long-term partnership perspective with Plenty, is that we can breed and actually attune a program to something that could literally be focused on the development of these plants specifically for this environment. Of course, that's years and years down the road. And all this growth that we see with Plenty, we see that these are going to be incremental to everything that we're doing already. So it's really complementary to the global system that Driscoll's has today. And I'll turn it over to Nate. I know he's got a few thoughts and comments on how this strawberry is going to get off the ground here in this partnership.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing to say is we see this enhancing people's opportunities for things, right? So in the same way that raising awareness about say coffee bolsters, and builds a massive trade and builds, more and more coffee shops, niche coffee shops. We think the same thing can happen for fresh fruits and vegetables. So as we go out and look at the world, we say there is this massive latent demand. How do we get people excited about strawberries? How do we get them wanting to taste lots of different kinds of strawberries and experience, the best strawberries? And so when we think about the products that we want to bring to the world, I think about it in kind of two parts. The first part is, what's the best version of that thing, right? So like, if you want to think about like a tomato, what's the best tomato you ever had? What was the experience? What was the emotional response to that? What did it taste like? And how do we get that to you all the time? And then the second thing is entirely new flavors, right? So most of us modern humans are really accustomed to specific flavors. And these are flavors that have been driven by, kind of the modernization of agriculture and supply chains and a lot of things. But the reality is there's so many incredible flavors out there waiting for people to experience them. So, when we think about strawberries, I hope that this relationship ultimately results in us being able to bring people strawberries that taste like the best version of that strawberry consistently, and then ultimately allow people to taste things in strawberries that they've never tasted before and didn't know even existed. Yeah. That I think is an exciting thing to bring to people.
Absolutely. I'm visualizing Wimbledon, whatever, 2023, and no cream. It'll be just strawberries. So that's the acid test. I'm going to move quickly here. We've got over 400 people on the line, and I'm getting bombarded with people want to talk to you and lots of questions. So I'll just do 2 quick questions before we go to the audience. In terms of like the consumer marketplace, like what does that look like in terms of product innovation? In terms of what can we expect, out there, and maybe Scott, and if you wanted to have a reflection on that and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure, John. Our marketing group that works very closely with the R&D group, we as we see really interesting things that come up through the program, we see opportunities to bring all new products to the consumers. And so beyond the berry patch that I showed in the first slide, we have at times during the year when everything's just lining up nicely, these new products, sweetest batch, and you can see those on the shelf right now. In our blueberries, for example, just really knock your socks off blueberries, and I guarantee you take one home and you'll just snack on it, and you'll probably finish it off before you share it with the rest of your family. So that'll go fast. At different times of year, we have rosé berries, and that's been an exciting new product set to come to the consumer. And then things like Big Berry, where in this paperboard packaging. And so that kind of innovation comes forward, and a lot of these are an expression of a certain flavor or maybe a size of the berry, and we'll take those to market. And we expect that we're going to find more of these as we partner up in this Plenty system. And as Nate mentioned, we're just going to unlock some more new flavors that didn't even know about before. It's going to be fun.
Excellent. And maybe one quick last question, outside of flavor, what are the areas of ag innovation, at Driscoll's and Plenty that you're prioritizing today? And after that, we'll go to the polls.
Sure. Well, first, John, I'd like to acknowledge the partnership we have with SVG Thrive. And we think your company does a super job in that relationship, because we really count on SVG to be the scout for us at the ag tech level. There's so much going on, we really can't keep up with it all. And so we really appreciate that partnership, because it allows us to connect with you, and you guys have that full landscape view, and we can see startups that are of particular interest to us. One area that I'll call out is precision farming. That's, my gosh, there's such a great opportunity for Driscoll's globally at the precision farming level. So that's one. High-speed phenotyping, which is we're taking a super precise data collection at a high-speed pace. That's really important to us for R&D, but also for our production groups. I'll tell you, it is hard forecasting future yield on our crops. And it's a long story, but I'll leave it there. So it's really important to us. And then the third area that crosses over, we think someday with Plenty, is robotic harvest. How could we bring that to all of those growing systems that we have, outdoors, indoors, and even the sophisticated environment like Plenty? That's we're really hopeful that that'll come forward, and because that's a big deal for us as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Nate, are there kind of key areas that you're prioritizing, and maybe a call out to entrepreneurs around the world that are tuned in today? What you'd like to see, or how you may need help.
Yeah, I think we're trying to build an entire new kind of agricultural infrastructure, and with that ag infrastructure comes a need for all sorts of new products and services. So in the same way that the field has developed all of these incredibly specialized technologies that help make farmers' lives better, make their businesses more efficient, I see a similar similar kinds of industries growing and arising around indoor ag. For us, obviously we tend to stay very focused on kind of our core business, our core technology products. And, we pull very heavily from other industries like the LED industry to help drive our company forward. I do think that, when we think about the opportunities for new businesses in this space, they're going to center around connecting with consumers. They're going to center around bringing down the cost of of, hardware systems that aren't necessarily that sexy, but are super, super important to our business, things like air handling and nutrient management and these types of things. So, a little bit more boring, I guess, in some ways, but wow, are there a lot of opportunities for folks that have, creative minds and can really understand the problems and start to build technologies that respond to them.
Super. Thanks, Nate. Let's go again, guys. Great conversation. I've got about 35 questions from the audience that are kind of coming in asking you questions. So get ready. We'll have to do rapid fire on these.
All right.
Before we do that, we'll take a look at the poll questions and maybe we'll just get a quick reflection in terms of any surprises, there in terms of, what we're seeing. So our first poll was over the next 5 to 10 years, what will be the top consumer purchase driver for fresh fruit or vegetables? And it looks like flavor is number one, but it's closely tied with environmentally responsible, farming. Any surprises, or what do you think about that?
It ranks pretty consistently with research that we do, John. Although sometimes the organic, no pesticide ranks a little higher than what we show here. But in many ways that ties in with the environmental responsible. So, but I'm glad to see, I know Nate's glad to see flavor at number one here.
It's good that we're all talking about the right thing here, which is great, so, and I'm looking at the next question. What's driving what macro trends can dramatically change the agriculture industry? And it looks like, climate change is just about coming out on top, closely followed by growing labor cost and scarcity of available labor. And, number 3, it looks like it's growing production, greenhouse, vertical farming. So any surprises there, Nate?
No, I don't think any of these answers are very surprising. I think, the first one, the difference between what people think matter and then what actually matters when they're making the purchasing decisions is always kind of an interesting difference. Mm-hmm. And then, on the second question, what are the macro trends that are driving these changes? I think the thing that stands out is that we're in the middle of some pretty massive structural changes in agriculture. And, the last time we saw these changes, it was, around the advent of the tractor, and then the advent of, hybrid seeds and all these crazy inputs that changed the face of agriculture globally. So I think it's an exciting time to be here. There are obviously a lot of really pressing constraints, but wow, what an interesting time to be alive and be a part of this industry.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Nate. And I'm going to go straight into the Q&A. We'll give you kind of rapid fire here. So Robert Kopstaz is asking, why vertical farms and not high-tech climate controlled greenhouses? That's
yeah, that's a great question. The way that I answer that question is we're on this continuum, right? That started, 10,000 years ago with a guy scratching the dirt with a stick, right? And we went from that to where we're at today, which has been, in the field, applying as many controls as possible to try and manage the outcome, right? Tractors, laser leveling, precision ag, like all of these different things are a part of this need to control the field further and further. And when we think about climate change, it represents a disruption to that continuum. Also, when we look at the field, we see we've got a mature technology. So we're seeing smaller incremental gains year on year in terms of yield and output. From that quest for more control, the greenhouse industry was born, 150 years ago. And then really in the last 60 years or so, we've seen the greenhouse industry start to rise up and take weight off of the field, right? And help to diversify the number of things that we can offer and where we can offer them and how we can offer them. Mm-hmm. But even greenhouses are limited. Greenhouses I compare to solar businesses, right? They're a solar energy business. Really, it comes down to the amount of energy that comes in. And so, the ability to grow many crops in greenhouses is highly dependent on where you're at in the world. So you have a much higher degree of control, but you're still somewhat geographically limited, sunlight, humidity, temperatures seasonally and annually. Like these things all limit where you can build greenhouses and what crops you can grow economically. And so, indoor farms are really like an extension of this thesis that more control allows you to expand the number of crops you can grow where, and allows you to focus on quality and controlling the outcome more and more and more. So for indoor farms, the exciting thing is when we look at the field, we've got mature tech. When we look at greenhouses, we have mature tech with incremental gain. When we look at indoor farming, we see multi-fold gains on an annual basis. We're at the beginning of a massive cost curve that takes us to a fundamentally different place in comparison to, say, greenhouses or the field. And frankly, that's what's necessary if we're going to double to triple the world's supply of fresh fruits and vegetables.
Thanks, Nate. There's a bunch of questions coming at you, Nate, here, so you gotta sharpen up these answers here.
I'm good at.
I got somebody, Brian O'Kennedy, a question for Nate, energy and CO2 emissions from vertical farming. Many of our food producers are under pressure to reduce the carbon associated with their products. Does Plenty present a lower carbon solution, or does vertical farming process produce more CO2 in the growing process? Fascinating initiative. Question and I guess a comment.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it is a very fair question, a question that should be asked more often of the indoor ag industry as it grows. But at the heart of this is kind of this global theme of electrifying everything, right? Why is electrifying everything necessary? Well, it's because sustainable energy, going back to this cost curve idea, sustainable energy is on a cost curve, right? Solar and wind are oftentimes beating fossil fuels globally. In most developed nations now, it's cheaper to buy solar and wind energy, and that's a pretty exciting thing, right? Because it means that it's not necessarily about how much energy you consume, it's about where it comes from and what the carbon cost of that energy is. So, in San Francisco, our farm is completely sustainable. We're in the process of basically running the Compton farm on sustainable energy as well. And so, we break free of this dependency on fossil fuels. Diesel is diesel, no matter where you go, but electricity is quite different depending on where you go. And so we're able to use energy sources that have historically been mostly out of bounds to agriculture.
Okay. Thanks, Nate. Andrew Rose is asking, if you had unlimited resources, when would you predict that your planting, growing, processing will be fully autonomous? I don't know who's going to answer that question.
I think, in indoor ag, I don't know. I think the question of like when we can be autonomous and whether we should be autonomous are kind of two different questions. Mm-hmm. And there's some things that people do very well and will always do very well that we shouldn't probably try to replace, where we shouldn't replace people with robots, for instance. Mm-hmm. That being said, there are some things that people do really poorly. Or that are really, really hard on people, right? Back-breaking labor that isn't awesome. This is the value of the tractor, right? To the field. The tractor came in and said, hey, you don't have to spend half of your land resources to feed animals to plow the other half of your resources. So is this valuable jump in quality of life for farmers? And we see the same turn around the corner, right? Like in none of these scenarios are we talking about a scarcity of labor opportunities. We're just talking about the quality of those labor opportunities. So transitioning people from jobs that they probably don't want to jobs that they definitely do.
Okay.
And the other thing I would say is that this technology, something we haven't really talked about today, but at a nursery level where these plants are first grown out, that's another opportunity to extend this technology. If we could grow the perfect nursery plant, okay, and probably everybody here on this call has some kind of experience, in their own backyard with the nursery, and the plant really wasn't that satisfactory. So imagine a perfect nursery plant. These are ways in which we can extend the technology to an even longer end-to-end possibility. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Scott. And I have a double-barreled a statement and a question for you, Scott. Ed Weinberg is on the East Coast. He's saying, He's the guy. I'm joining from the East Coast and having berries and cream for lunch right now. So Ed, I hope you're enjoying those. And then George Murdoch does Plenty envision using a similar model as Driscoll's? Hang on a second, that question just bounced around here. Hang on. Yeah. Does Plenty envision using a similar model as Driscoll's is having to partner with producers in different parts of the country, local farmer investors in your system?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of potential business models for this industry. Again, we're not talking about a small thing here that we're trying to do. And so, the Plenty business model in the near term is own and operate, right? That has kind of been our business model, mostly because there's a lot of hard things to running and operating a farm like this. So, we want to make sure that we're controlling the processes in the farm, that we're learning as much as we can before we ask someone who hasn't spent the time designing it and working with these things to try and run them. But yeah, I mean, as this industry matures, I see all sorts of diverse business models rising up. This is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, right? When we really think about doubling or tripling the size of the world's fresh fruit and vegetable production. So yeah, a lot of diversity of models.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I'm going to have to pause there. There's another 35 questions. We'll get back to people, I'm sure, and really enjoying the fact that people are so plugged into this fascinating conversation. I think we could probably go for another hour again. Just to wrap up, Scott, Nate, great talking to you. Really fascinating conversation in terms of not just innovation, but the consumer and how you're delighting and going to continue to delight customers and consumers in the future. So big thank you and congratulations on your partnership. It's really an exciting statement for our industry.
Thanks for having us, John. Again, thanks for the partnership with Thrive. It's really valuable, and we appreciate being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, same here. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Nate. So maybe just to wrap things up, we have, as I'd mentioned earlier, next month, December already. It is a quick year. We'll have the Australian Challenge, so you'll see the best of Australia pitching live, and on January 14th, we will have the Canadian Challenge, Best of Canada. And on February 4th, we're going to have Thrive Africa. Thrive Africa is leading the way in terms of the number of applications that we're getting. It's absolutely incredible. We've had over 200 applications, just from Africa alone, from across the continent. So really excited to see these entrepreneurs. And then finally, I'd like to thank our team, thank our panelists. I'd like to thank our audience today for tuning in. Hope you're all keeping safe and keeping well, and we will talk to you next month. Take care and happy Thanksgiving to everybody in advance.